Definitely, this aircraft revolutionized passenger transportation in the 30s and 40s. The design of the Douglas Commercial 3 was so advanced for its time that even today, 85 years after its first flight, which was in 1935, it is still operating in different parts of the world. For many, it is the best 20th century airplane, having flown for over 85 years worldwide, being an icon of all past and present times in aviation. The military version, the Douglas C-47 Skytrain, or Dakota for the Royal Air Force, was widely used by the Allies during World War II as a military transport for dropping paratroopers and towing gliders, among many other functions that we will see in a new video of the Aeropedia from Mundo de Aviación. The history of this aircraft begins with the request of a private company, Trans World Airlines, which was looking to compete with United, which had a fleet with Pong airplanes, 247, which could carry 10 passengers at a speed of 280 km per hour. Douglas accepted the challenge of designing an aircraft with better performance, and the result was the Douglas Commercial 1. They called it Douglas Commercial for Douglas Commercial, and it could carry up to 12 passengers. And only a single prototype was built. Given the aircraft's successful design, Trans World Airlines ordered a batch of 20 units equipped with 900 horsepower engines instead of the 700 horsepower ones on the Douglas Commercial 1. This allowed for 2 more passengers, but structurally it was practically the same and was called the Douglas Commercial 2. When American Airlines, which offered a transcontinental night service, proposed to Douglas a Douglas Commercial 2 with a wider fuselage, greater wingspan and more powerful engines, they designed the Douglas Commercial T Douglas Sleeper Transport. And this was the true origin of the Douglas Commercial 3, which was the name given to a daytime version for shorter routes, with capacity for 21 passengers. And it had its first flight on December 17, 1935. This capacity was what launched the DC-3 to its incredible commercial success. At first, 400 planes were sold to the main aviation companies of the time, and they quickly displaced the train for long-distance travel within the United States. Part of its incredible success is due to its revolutionary design for the time, which was later used in subsequent designs around the world. One of these advances was that, until then, airplanes usually had completely straight wings or wings shaped like this. And the engineers at Douglas realized that with the new shape, the center of gravity was balanced and the stability improved enormously. And to minimize turbulence and drag between the wings and the fuselage, the engineers came up with an element called a fillet. Another major breakthrough was a circular cross-section fuselage, since previous aircraft had more square-shaped fuselages. And the new cylindrical shape provided not only aerodynamics, but also structural strength, giving it a lot of resistance. Notice that all these details can be seen in the designs of most modern airplanes. Thanks to its speed, ease of maintenance, range and performance, the Douglas Commercial 3 was the first successful commercial civil airplane for its operators, without having to sacrifice the comfort of its passengers. But then World War II began, and many of these planes were converted for military use. And they were built. In addition, more than 16,000 units of different variants of this aircraft were built, with a reinforced floor and a much larger cargo door, called C-47 Skytrain. About 11,000 units were produced in the United States, with many more built under license in the Soviet Union, as the Lizunov Li-2 totaling around 5,000 units. The C-47 was a vital transport for many Allied operations, particularly in the Pacific operations against Japan. The modified version C-53 Skytrooper was used in Europe to transport paratroopers and tow gliders. The C-47s dropped more than 50,000 paratroopers during the first days of the D-Day campaign, also known as the Normandy invasion, in France in June of 1944. From 2047. In British service, they took the name Dakota, possibly inspired by the acronym Douglas Aircraft Company Transport Aircraft for Douglas Aircraft Company Transport Aircraft. Incredibly, shortly before World War II, Japan obtained the license to rebuild it and manufactured almost 500 units called Jua L2D and Nakajima L2D. And I say, this is incredible because, as many of you know, Japan was an enemy of the United States in World War II. The production of civilian Douglas Commercial 3S ended in 1942. The military versions were produced until the end of the war, in 1945. After the conflict, thousands of these planes were converted for civilian use and turned the Douglas Commercial 3 into the standard equipment for many years. Of all the aviation companies in the world, the United States Air Force used it in the post-war period until 1967, but the 6th Special Operations Squadron kept flying some until 2008, still in full service. The attack cargo, 47. Spooky is a modified version of the C-47, a transport aircraft used as a gunship by the United States Air Force in the Vietnam War. And electronic warfare versions called S-47 were also used, which were also operated by the Vietnamese, Laotian and Cambodian Air Forces. Large numbers of surplus Douglas Commercial 3 and C-47 aircraft were used commercially in the United States in the 1940s. Douglas offered a late-decade conversion of the Douglas Commercial 3 with more powerful engines and a fuselage 1 meter longer. Called the Super Douglas Commercial 3, it allowed up to 30 passengers to be carried at higher speeds to compete with the new airplanes. However, commercial operators had little interest in the Super Douglas Commercial 3 because it was too expensive and only 3 units were sold. It was a twin-engine design with a low wing and an all-metal construction. It had a maximum takeoff weight of 11,400 kilograms and a range of 2,100 kilometers. Its maximum speed was 370 kilometers per hour, and it could carry from 21 to 32 passengers. It had Pratt & Whitney R1830 twin Wasp 14-cylinder radial engines, Among many interesting facts, it is the only retractable landing gear airplane in the world capable of landing with its wheels inside without damaging the surface of the aircraft. This is because when the landing gear is retracted, part of the wheel sticks out about 40 centimeters. So if a hydraulic failure occurred and the main units did not come down from their position, it was still possible to make a safe landing. Despite the advantages that the new versions offered for mass air transport, many more modern models disappeared into the oblivion of history under various circumstances, while the Kier-3 continues to fly today in some countries. There are even some versions that have been re-engined with turboprops like the Blaster PT-67. For many, this makes it the best 20th century airplane ever. Because despite everything, it has already flown for more than 85 years all over the world, becoming an icon of aviation throughout past and present times. The aircraft I have here behind me is a unique model. It was purchased by the Argentine Air Force in 1950, and they used it to make the first transpolo flight. Its original engines were replaced with those from the Douglas Commercial 4, and a Marlboro model turbine was added. Two of them provide 400 kilograms of thrust, and it also has support for using jet-assisted takeoff type rockets, which are the rockets used for short-distance takeoff. Thus it was transformed into a machine with piston engines, turbine and rocket propulsion. Inside, 5 extra fuel tanks had been installed for greater range. He completed 12 crossings, landing at the South Pole from 1965 to 1969. Until a new video, I'm Marcos and welcome to the Heropedia of the world of aviation.